Okay, so Bill's the only guy to be obsessing about this.
Wow.
Woo!
Yes, I went there.
And Bill is speechless.
He's trying
I
to
gotta,
kill me over the internet with his mind.
You can feel the tingle in the force already, can't you?
I've got to say though, this would not be quite so jarring of a transition if the Doctor wasn't going on and on about how compassion made no sense and it was a human only thing and such after, right after the fifth Doctor.
You know, though in many ways that's kind of the 11th Doctor versus the 10th again. The 11th Doctor or the 10th Doctor for everything was still very human at times. He understood humans at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Whereas we get to Matt Smith in The Lodger not understanding real basic things about human society. And me going, really?
Because he wants to forget, Randy.
Apparently not just the war, huh?
It covers everything, Randy. It covers everything, including his cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It's part of him trying to forget.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the reasons I still say Matt Smith's persona was senility. If 9 is midlife crisis, then 11 is senility, which oddly enough makes 10 the autumn years.
His golden years.
Well, he did
I'm
lie.
sorry. I got David Bowie in my brain now.
He did lie about his age
Bye
throughout
bye.
that entire incarnation.
I'm still with the Amanda Hagen. I don't hate the new series as much as she seems to do, unless that's all an act. Could be all an act.
It could be an all-in act,
'Cause
for all we know.
she kind of goes back towards the end when she's like, when she's finally discussing like end of time. She kind of goes back and admits that it's a combination of stuff. It's not just David Tennant's acting, and it's not just Russell T Davies writing that she doesn't like.
I'm really since
That
we're
they
getting
are
on the subject
capable
of
of
Hagen, I'm really shocked that she likes the Sixth Doctor so much, yet cannot accept Nine as the Doctor when so many of Nine's personality traits were exhibited first by the Sixth.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a below the belt there. It's like Hagen, really? You can't. You look at these two together. Check their ego list. Yeah.
Like there were so many times during the Twin Dilemma that I was expecting the Doctor to turn around and be like, "Stupid apes!"
Yeah, it's really though, it's kind of hard to tell how much of this was actually going to be driven through because he was so all over the board in this scene, in this serial though. Yet at one point he's Captain Ego. At one point he's almost back to being Colin Baker, crawled up, terrified in the console room, and then in the costume wardrobe, and then he starts laughing, and then he goes homicidal, and then he goes cowardly. It's like Jesus.
And yet all
You're
of
supposed
it's
to be,
really, yeah.
By the way,
you're
Colin
supposed
Baker
to
is
be,
now making puppy eyes to you.
you're supposed to be telling the stereo, establishing this is who the Doctor is, this is what he does, and instead you are like firing arrows all over the dartboard.
It's not just these firing arrows; they're all unlikable traits that they cycle through.
Yeah, they're firing off all the
Yeah,
unlikable,
that's the thing,
negative
because
things that they possibly could all at once.
Tom had a lot of different directions he was going in his first story as well, but you at least got the sense that this was a character you could enjoy watching act like a buffoon. Whereas it was kind of hard to make that statement about Colin in this episode.
Yeah, like I said, that goes back to their whole plan of making him unlikable and then slowly peeling it away. It's a bad idea when you're doing this to the main character of a show
Especially
because the likability
especially
is what keeps people coming back.
and here's the thing, if it's the season premiere and you have an unlikable character, that can be made to work if you handle it well. You can, I mean, well, granted, that's what we had in 1963, although he wasn't quite the main character at that point.
No, he
But
wasn't. The series was focused on
right,
Susan and Ian and Barbara.
yeah. But I mean, let's say that season what the hell is this? Season 24,
No,
25,
season 21. This was the final story of season 21.
22 would have been
21.
next.
Wait.
Because
Yeah,
24
because
would have been the first Sylvester McCoy.
Oh yeah, you're right. The end of 21. Yeah. No. Okay. No. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this would have been 21.
And
Yeah.
but no. Okay. But what I'm if this had been the first of 22, and they had gone to okay, the emphasis is going to be on Perry, who just you know survived Caves of Androzani and has no idea what's going on, and she's with this unlikable jackass of a doctor, and it's pretty much an 80s version of season 1 back in 1963 and 64. It could have been done. You don't do that at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Not if you have fans expecting a certain show and then just saying to hell with it.
Well, yeah, it's a bad idea to do this post-regeneration episode as the series finale anyway. Because you've got too much work to do, plus trying to do a finish to the series. Really, what they should have done is slap together an episode to air before Caves of Androzani with Nicole Bryant and Peter
So
Davidson.
that basically would be Perry's true introduction as a companion then, rather than
Correct.
really
That
pushing
was,
that off to the twin dilemma.
yeah, which was kind of a big problem. The only major problem with Caves is it didn't give, you had to try to establish Perry as the companion and slap together Davidson's swan song as well. I
And
mean,
Perry really isn't. I mean, Perry's basically a sick girl in need of, waiting for help throughout the Caves of Androzani. She's not really a driving force in the narrative in any way I could
and
say.
you only saw her in the serial before, so you really hadn't had a chance to get attached to her.
Right.
So it would have been more poignant if they had rewritten this episode as a Peter Davidson episode, and taken out all the regeneration stuff and worked on fleshing it out and making it better, just writing wise, and then putting this prior to Caves. Because you could do that. If you took out the first 2 blocks of this serial with the Doctor overacting and going nuts.
I feel like Peter Davison and the twins would just make it even more obvious how much of a watered-down version of Adric they are.
I don't see that as much as you guys do. I honestly don't.
Well,
If they were wearing badges for mathematical excellence, would you see it?
No.
well, what about yellow jumpsuits?
Well, they were color-coded. They were wearing jumpsuits that were yellow blended with another primary color.
To be honest, my main issue with the twins was that they had to name them Romulus and Remus.
and they couldn't act.
Apparently, that's the only name that sci-fi can come up with for anything that's a twin. Not sure why.
Yeah, it was just for me. That was a particular painful moment for me. Me being an old Star Trek buff.
Honestly,
and
when I
knowing
first heard of
the
Romulus and
origin
Remus
story
in
of
Star
Rome.
Trek, I think I facepalmed.
What's that?
Honestly, I think when I first heard of that there was Romulus and Remus in Star Trek, I facepalmed.
Well, that one I accepted because it was essentially the Terran name for their worlds.
Hmm.
So
But
basically,
I thought the Romulans were referring to it in that way as well.
translation, universal translator.
Hmm.
It's not. It's pretty much canon that it's called Romulus, but if you read a lot of the extended stuff, it was actually named something like Rahansu.
Like Konos versus Kronos.
Correct. The basically the Terrans heard about a system with a twin world starting with R and decided to name them Romulus and Remus. And like the fact that everybody refers to the Japanese as the Japanese, but it's basically Nihon in
Mhm.
Japan. Um, uh, Makes no difference on the global scale. It's the same thing with Romulus. It's pretty much um, that's what everybody calls the planet, so therefore that's what it's called. So I accepted that one. But the fact that you have two children and you are going to name them Romulus and Remus, who the fuck do you think you are?
Apparently, a very bad, over-the-top actor who
Well,
gets
the
only about
entire
5 minutes of on-screen time.
the entire society did agree that apparently these twins were ridiculously important, so maybe they were born specifically to go off and build a new
Is
empire
that me
for.
or is that you guys? Because I
What?
lost half that conversation.
No, I heard it.
I heard it.
Okay, it must be me then.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must be having a little bit of poor internet. Let me see if I can
Uh,
kill some stuff. Increase
Sad Colin
bandwidth.
Baker is still sad. Moving on.
Anyway,
Aww.
It's Colin Baker, the biggest puppy dog eyes you've ever seen.
He does look so sad and pathetic. Speaking of sad and pathetic, Barry. I really don't like how I was forced to kind of like, feel sorry for her. I wouldn't say like her. I just I sim. I felt pity for her. I didn't sympathize with her either. I was going through the same stuff that she was going through, but yeah.
what's this?
Perry.
Talking about Perry, why I'm not that
you know,
enthused with her as a
it's
companion.
it's kind of
I
fitting
actually
that
don't
she.
mind Perry that
It's
much. I
it's
find her to
kind
be
of fitting
superior
that he
to
calls
Mel
her.
at the very least.
It's kind of fitting that he calls her Tegan at one point in this episode because up to this point, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't seen Perry's first episode, but I mean, of what I've seen with her, she comes on the TARDIS, gets poisoned because the doctor wants to go off and I forget what the hell he even wanted to do. She gets poisoned, almost dies. He
Let's see.
regenerates. He tries
Let's
to
see.
kill her.
Perry's tenure on the TARDIS. Nearly drowns off the coast of Greece. Is rescued by Turlo. Nearly killed by the Master. Rescued by the Doctor. Nearly gets poisoned. Rescued by the Doctor. Nearly strangled by the Doctor. And winds up getting nursemaided through this episode. Um, I think she turns out okay in the next episode. Nothing particularly revolves around her nearly dying. But then she's nearly turned into a bird girl in the episode after that.
Yep. Saved by the doctor again.
Mm-hmm. Then
Thankfully,
I
the
think she's
doctor
nearly
never
turned
attempts
into
to
a
eat her.
tree in the episode after that.
Oh yeah, that's right. She was almost turned into a tree. And saved
Thankfully, the
by a
doctor
tree.
never attempts to eat her later on. That would have been bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been about the episode after that she's nearly eaten. Then she meets H.G. Wells, but I can't remember the rest of that one. It wasn't particularly good. Then series, then nearly turned into a Dalek.
Yep.
Then season break. Then um,
Everyone just wants to mutate her into something.
I'm trying to remember if there's
She
anything that went
actually
wrong
April.
in the first of the Trial of the Time Lord. If anything happened to her, because
Didn't
in the
he
second
almost?
one, of course, she
Didn't he
nearly
try to?
becomes the.
Didn't
What's
he
that?
abandon her? Didn't he abandon her to die at one point, and then like she came back later in the episode and
I don't know.
You're thinking
They
Trial
never
of Time
mentioned it
Lord,
again?
where they had her captured and tried to do the brain
That was
transplant,
the
and they find
second
out later that
serial
she was rescued.
trial.
I know,
That
but I
was the
thought
second.
like before that he basically like just like treated like she was like left her for dead, and then she was fine later on, and they just went back off in the TARDIS again together.
It's possible. I don't know. So yeah, she doesn't have the best career. No wonder when Kenya Carno said "marry me," she's like, "Okay."
You know
Get
what?
away from
You're
that
big, you're
psycho.
bombastic, but you know what? You're not a crazy man who might have strangled me, so I think I feel safer with you, Mr. Beardy Man with no indoor
Yeah,
voice.
I was gonna say, speaking of mutation, she kind of reminds me of April O'Neil in that, because I remember in Ninja Turtles everyone was trying to mutate her into a fish or a cat or something like that.
Matter of fact, there was
Well,
actually a transformation one where she turned into a cat for a toy.
Well, yeah, and like I
Yeah,
said,
she was on.
I like Perry better than I like Mel, because Mel is kind of a
that's not
one-trick
a high
pony.
bar to set.
Going for
Well,
the low
no,
That's going for low hanging fruit. Mel is pretty low on the totem pole, right about there with
yes, I
Dodo.
know, but Mel is the one that comes right
that's
after
like
her.
saying Harry Sullivan's better than Mike Yates.
Yes, but
Not
of the
the
six
highest
Doctor,
bar.
when dealing with Six Doctor companions, you've got Perry and you've got Mel. So of the two, I'd take Perry.
Celebrity Deathmatch.
If it was Celebrity Deathmatch, Mel would win because she would blow up Perry's head with her screaming.
Yes, she would. She would basically scream the skin off of Perry.
Pretty much. And then drink a cup of orange juice.
It'd be like it would
Or
be
carrot
like
juice.
facing Banshee of the X-Men. It'd be bad.
Or Melina from Mortal Kombat.
I don't know. I'm not a big Mortal Kombat person, as you guys.
Woman in purple outfit, white hair. She has scream attack that could knock you across the level.
I've seen her fatality on Game Theory.
Oh, there's that too. Yeah, she also has a fatality where she makes people literally explode with her scream.
Mm. Sorry, I was more of a Killer Instinct player.
Killer Instinct doesn't have enough of a franchise. It only has like maybe 2 games I can get.
They need a Doctor Who fighting game.
No, that kind of defeats the purpose of Doctor Who.
Yeah,
you
it would
couldn't
be.
play the Doctor because the Doctor, unless you had the third Doctor, but he's
Yeah.
generally
The
a
third-
self-defense guy.
Oh God, the third
That
Doctor.
defeats the point of the entire Doctor Who, and then the 4th Doctor comes up behind Randy with a scarf.
The third Doctor in a side-scrolling beat 'em up. I would buy the shit out of that.
You know what?
Oh
If
my
they made
God.
it 8-bit themed and didn't make it suck, I would
So,
probably
like
buy into
taking
it.
Double Dragon and
Yes.
basically putting the third Doctor in the Lee's role,
Yes.
Yes.
or like River City Rampage or something like that.
Absolutely.
Hot.
Absolutely, yeah. 3rd Doctor, River City Rampage. Someone mod that. I know you out there, programmers.
Um.
And
So what we're
it's very easy to
talking
make
about-
8-bit music. But anyway.
Yeah,
Oh, we were
we
talking
really
about
can't.
Perry.
We're talking about Perry. And Aaron doesn't like her. I like said she's better than the alternative out there.
I think.
Yeah, because the other thing is,
that from Perry was caused by the twin dilemma permanently scarring her brain.
it's possible.
Yeah. That's
She
where I'm
seemed-
kind of going with
She
too.
seemed like such a nice young lady in Caves of Androzani.
Yeah, she's confident, she's happy, at least coming into the situation. She seems to be fairly straightforward, especially for somebody that was, drowned, rescued, and nearly killed by the Master in the previous serial. But she's like, basically the Doctor's taking her on as a student because he's teaching her things.
And then he
And then we get to
transforms,
this
and
one.
it's just constantly catching her, backing away.
Yeah. And
She always-
eventually they get to a little bit more of an on-par relationship. Like the Doctor tries to take her to Kew Gardens and fails, but still.
Like I
It's,
know by the time of the 2 Doctors, they're pretty much at least on equal footing. They're verbally sparring with each other. It's less like abusive. Like abusive is the best word I can come up with, honestly. She does not have a good time
I think
here.
it takes Perry a while to learn to give as good as she gets.
Yeah.
So they go from having a functional friendship under the 5th Doctor to a dysfunctional relationship under the 6th Doctor.
Very dysfunctional, if you can even call it the only dysfunctional.
I'm
But
sure it rises to dysfunctional. This
I'm
one it's
kind of
non.
surprised there was never an episode where Perry and the Master team up to get rid of the Doctor. I mean, I could
Peregrine,
almost
will
see,
you help
I
me?
mean, I could almost see Tegan doing it, but Perry, especially after watching this, I could really see Perry getting behind it.
Tell me, Miss Brown, why are you traveling with him? I mean, he's tried to kill you.
Perhaps,
Don't you think you should
Miss
turn the
Brown, you would like
tables?
to take revenge back upon him. Here, take this with you.
The problem
Our
is
little
that Master at
secrets.
this point is so over the top campy villain that even
Yeah,
Perry sees through it.
Roger Delgado would definitely.
Delgado, it might work. Ainley's
He would
just
have
the one that's
charmed her
over.
pants off in seconds.
Yeah, Delgado was great, but Ainley is just. I
Although that
swear they should
said,
have.
I think Ainley is a little more subtle than Roberts.
Yeah.
Again,
Well, we
pulling
don't have enough
straws.
of Roberts to know because the fact that Roberts was literally, the character was under the gun the entire movie, so didn't really have the time to set anything up and be subtle. He's in a body that's rapidly decaying and needs to steal the doctor's body within like 24 hours, essentially. So he's kind of desperate. He's kind of like John Sims Master in End of Time.
Which makes me wonder how long was the period between Keeper of Traken and Castrovalva?
Not that long.
24 hours, maybe?
Vaguely.
Why do you say that?
I don't know, I just get the impression it all happened pretty quickly. I mean, Nissa hadn't even known her father was taken over by the
I
Master
would
by the
say it was
beginning of
probably
Legopolis.
less than a week. I think it's a little more than 24 hours
Yeah.
because there seems to be a tangible break between Traken and Legopolis of,
Yeah.
maybe a day or two. Enough that the doctor can, finish what he is not hurrying and is being broody about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely less than a week. Anyway, that's neither here nor there because we're discussing the
Right.
twin dilemma.
Stop trying to talk about good things. Get back on
Yeah.
track.
Speaking of, one interesting, I think Matt was the one that mentioned a lot of rewrites in this episode. Anyone ever think that Asmael was originally possibly intended to be, what's his name, Kanpo? Am I getting that right?
It's possible he was Campo. It's possible, though I don't think so, because Campo was a monk the Doctor knew as a kid. We're getting the feeling that Asmael
Well, I thought he was like they mentioned that he was originally the Doctor's mentor.
He
at the
was a
academy.
mentor, not the
Yeah.
only
Yes,
mentor.
Okay, yeah.
he's
But I mean,
described as
that's
being the best
yeah.
teacher the Doctor had, referring to academic teachers,
He
Mhm.
also
Probably,
refers
yes.
that he knew the guy 2 regenerations ago.
which would have
Right,
been during the fourth Doctor.
but the last
Hmm.
time he saw Kanpo was when he regenerated into the Fourth Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I don't think it's Campo because Campo was not the one to would not be the one to be ruler of a planet,
Yeah, that's that's
That's
that's the
just
thing that
it.
throws it off. But
and two, um,
I
Camp
mean, I think that part
Choji
might have been why
Kempo
they ultimately decided not to have him be him.
Choji Kempo was more of the Doctor's youthful spiritual advisor, or the youthful Doctor's spiritual advisor, whereas Asmael was actually a teacher. It would be like having your favorite math professor versus the wise men up the road that you always took the advice of. That's the
Mm-hmm.
difference there.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think that's supposed to be the same role. I wondered vaguely if he was supposed to be Professor Chronatus from Shada originally.
That's also a huge maybe.
Mhm.
That's also very possible.
But other
I
than that,
think
this is
he's a
just
jealous Adric. He's time locked jealous Adric.
You and your
but
Adric smack.
other than that, this is another person to add to the list of Time Lords we've seen outside of Gallifrey.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is what, the fourth one?
I've
Fifth one?
seen a few sources state him as a renegade Time Lord, but honestly, other than the fact that he's for some reason we don't know responsible for a planet, there's no really Nothing
He is
really
a
got
renegade
painted
Time
as a
Lord.
renegade. How
He is
did,
renegade if he's actually interfering with anything in present time.
If he's functioning outside of Time Lord society on Gallifrey, he's a renegade.
Yeah,
so you're saying Kenpo would count as a renegade then?
technically.
Correct. Yes, they
Because didn't we
actually
have
say
this
that.
whole conversation about the difference between retired and renegade?
Um, yeah, but you don't retire to go rule a planet.
No, but I mean, doesn't we don't know how he became either. You know, he could have been trying to live in peace, and they elected him president for life
Even
or something. We
so,
really
the
don't
Time
know.
Lords themselves would be looking on that and frowning badly
Yeah.
Yeah,
because that's interfering with temporal events.
right.
How
So
did
that would
he?
They
How
don't
was he able to rule this planet without them stepping in?
they don't explain, and to
We
be
really have
honest,
no
they
idea.
probably felt that things were safe enough anyway, so they didn't bother.
yeah.
They had these well, they had these three other crazy, or actually four other crazy Time Lords. Okay, a lot of other crazy Time Lords running around that were doing much more damage to the continuum. They probably just let him go.
Yeah, I mean, they've had to deal with the war chief. They've
The
got the
war,
meddling monk out there somewhere.
Warchief,
the
meddling monk,
master,
the
the
doctor, the
Rani, the
master, the
The
doctor.
Ronnie.
Ronnie technically isn't an issue yet because she hasn't actually shown up in the show yet.
She hasn't shown up in the
So
show, but
theoretically
that's not
speaking,
to
she's
say that
out there.
she's not technically a
Yeah.
part of this time stream that's also getting skewed already.
Although it's interesting to note that the Ronnie is ruler of her own planet too.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be a thing that the Soured era seems to be doing with its renegade Time Lords. Is they're all leaving Gallifrey and taking control of planets.
And come to think of it, wasn't Morbius in charge of a planet after he got exiled?
Karn, he was basically forcibly took control of Karn, though I think nobody knew he was Morbius at the time.
Yeah.
Because
Oh
the
yeah,
fact,
and
the
then
fact
there's Mobius, so that's
if the
technically
Time Lords
6.
knew that Morbius was still alive, they would have come after him with all their boots unpolished and swords unsheathed, because he's the only renegade Time Lord to actually rule Gallifrey for a time. Even
Other
if it
than
was
the
only
Doctor.
a little bit before they retook control and basically tore his body apart.
Or Rassilon could have twirled his mustache at him and turned him into a statue.
Yeah, I think Morbius though happened post Rassilon.
Hun, did you say that there was like a force or an entity that was controlling these rogue Time Lords, or
No.
No.
maybe I just misheard it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he was saying Sayward, the story editor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Eric's during the Soured era, he's the main story editor from about Resurrection of the Daleks, pretty much through the end of the Sixth Doctor era. There's
Okay.
I think he steps down sometime in the '86 season.
He wrote Earthshock. He became story editor somewhere in the following season, and then yeah, he ran through the. I'm pretty I think Trial of the Time Lord. He either made it through the end of that, or I know that
He
Cartmel's
stepped down
first.
as part of it because he didn't.
Yeah.
I think he was. I think he stepped down before the last part.
I
because
know
there was
that I know that the following season was Cartmel's first, and that there was a lot of scripts that Sayward had commissioned that Cartmel was just doing
What
the
the
best
fuck?
with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, the issue, Soured, though, every time a Time Lord has shown up, he's been a renegade in charge of their own planet or deposed from their own planet.
Okay.
So, because we've got this one and we've got the Ronnie. It's also, he establishes the Time Lords as being up to a lot of no good, as in Trial of a Time Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Soured's view of the Time Lords in general is not a good one.
Well, we already didn't have a very good positive look on them from even the second Doctor's standpoint, to be honest.
From the second Doctor standpoint, when we see them, they're basically coming out, and they're basically acting like gods.
In
I can
shorthand,
do this.
they're also acting like douches.
Yeah, they're acting like douchey gods, but they're acting like gods. But as we've stated in, the previous one, they're basically putting their best face forward in that. Then we see them again in the
And
Three
the
Doctors.
doctor is not having any of it.
Yeah, and then
The doctor in the war games is pretty much your kid who knows all of your bullshit. You trying to, calmly say something in public and calling you out on it every
yeah,
chance he gets.
yeah, they're basically we're punishing you because we know better, and the doctor's like, "Fuck you, don't." Um, but then we see them again in the Three Doctors, and they're still pretty damn powerful, but they've been rendered powerless by something even more powerful than them, namely Omega. So they basically seem very impotent in that.
Well,
And
now you
that,
say that, I feel like a lot of the Davies era view of the Time Lords comes a lot from the Sayward era.
well, yeah, because pretty much starting with uh, Deadly Assassin, they're pretty much seen as being basically tied down in red tape and more or less completely incompetent overall. Basically, of seeing
Mhm.
this society that's basically kind of degraded power-wise because they've been all powerful for so long, they've forgotten what that actually means. And then, yeah, we get to the Sacred Era where we actually discover that not only are they incompetent, they're corrupt. So we actually, over the course of the 26 years, actually see the devolution and slide that actually kind of leads into the Time War. Because you can imagine this mostly impotent and corrupt society getting attacked by Daleks and going, the fuck?
And of
You
course,
Mhm.
know?
at the same time, looking through that entire span, we also see the evolution of the Daleks themselves going from, simple conquerors to, hey, time travel,
Mm-hmm.
to time travelers run by a megalomaniac.
To time travelers run by a megalomaniac aware of another group of time travelers that hold all the keys.
Although I've got to say, I would love to see something about, like, when we're getting too far off topic, but
No,
Remembrance
no,
of
we're
the
still on
Daleks,
Doctor Who at
and
least.
Remembrance of the Daleks when Davros is like, "You're just another Time Lord to me." That says to me, "Wow, this guy's faced off and defeated Time Lords. I want to see that."
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, um, so okay, so let's get on to the actual what's his face Sergeant
The space cop.
Is it
yeah.
Mhm.
wrong that I thought of him as Proto Jack?
Mhm.
Like Jack is so much more, but at the same time, like in this story, like especially since with the 6 and 9 parallels we've drawn, I just kept seeing him as like
I don't know. I don't really
I
see
don't know
him
if
as
it's kind of
Proto
weird and
Jack
it's
because there's not really much of Jack
mhm.
No, there's
in
not
this
really any
character.
Jack in this guy, no.
Mm.
He's pretty cut and dry.
Should I
He
say
wears blue.
specifically Jack in the ending two-parter of series 1 more than anything
Even there,
else.
you don't really see that.
Yeah, you don't really see. I don't see ending Jack either, because he's more the action hero there. This guy was really not much of an action hero.
And this
He's
guy
kind
didn't have much personality at all.
He didn't have any
yeah, he's
personality.
a
He
pretty
Oh,
constantly
but
got
flat.
pistol whipped and
he
knocked
did
out.
have a shiny rainbow jacket.
God.
He also had a blue police
I'm
uniform.
sorry. I saw the wardrobe and I'm like, oh my God, it's the 80s.
I like. I feel like he was challenging the Doctor to see who can have the worst coat.
No, no, no. The Doctor won by far.
You want to know what's worse than that coat? That coat is where they also hid the guy's ammo when they disarmed his gun.
Yes. No.
mm,
I mean, how many outfits are in the wardrobe and
Really?
he just happens to have the one that's holding his ammo thing?
Let's hide it in the shiniest thing in the room. He'll never look here.
He'll never try it on or anything.
see, that's where
Yeah, I would
Hugo's
have put it in one of the boots. Yeah.
that's where Hugo wins over the Doctor. His coat is shinier.
Yeah, that's what makes me think 80s was all the sequiny shininess.
And I like how I think at some point in this story, Perry changed into a rainbow coat as well. And I'm just like, God, is everyone in this story wearing rainbows?
I don't know, Rainbow. She put on a plaid shirt though.
A plaid. Yeah, I'm sitting here going, wow, really?
It's Rainbow Bright.
So
Well,
you're Patty McDougal now?
there's about 5 different kinds of plaid here, and that's a fashion nunu.
Yeah, it was kind of my thought there. um, was it was like, wow, so now you're showing yourself Scottish, and she actually seemed to enunciate with a little bit of a Scottish accent in that outfit a couple of times. Of course, Perry is actually a British person trying to fake an American accent.
You can tell.
Mm,
And
Yeah,
at times.
but
apparently, the production team thought that Nicola Bryant was American.
yeah,
I'm baffled by this because my brain cannot explain it.
well, the fact that we're Americans listening in means that we can really tell. So the fact that when she lapses back into her Britishism, when she misses a syllable or something like that, it's not that apparent to people who normally talk that way.
Yes, but they're also professionals.
It still doesn't matter. It's a cultural thing.
This is also the end of the budget too. Did she actually have a coach to help her, or
Yeah,
was
she had.
Okay.
She did, but it's very hard when you have an accent, well, when you have a regional dialect like that, to iron it out and doing another accent entirely, unless the dialect you have is fairly bland. Matt and I are lucky in the fact that we're Midwesterners, and Midwesterners have a fairly bland accent. Um, we're in Wisconsin, so it's a little harder because we get some of that Wisconsin Minnesotan accent coming in, don't you know?
Don't know there, down there, he.
Yeah.
Down by the bayou.
Um, and I apparently lapse into what I refer to as Southwest Wisconsin redneckism,
Up there by
where
Dubuque.
I tend to forget G's on occasion while I'm
You
running out.
lapse into you lapse into quite a few different accents, though.
Yeah, Randy, you just grab accents like they're a disease.
Oh,
Sorry,
God.
that's a family trait. My mother's the same way. She
I'm
lives in
waiting for you
Canada
to.
now. She lives in Canada now, and I can't tell that she's not a Canadian, eh?
Eh there, eh?
I'm waiting for you to just fall into Ranma's accent one day and not realize it for a whole podcast.
Won't happen.
And until the day that Randy does a marathon before the podcast.
Absolutely. He spends a day writing on his fanfic and then fires up for the podcast.
Well, you see, there I'd be more apt to break into my hybrid accent, so it wouldn't be quite the same as being pure Japanese dialectism, which I really am not that good at doing anyway. But anyway, yeah, Perry is faking her American accent. You can tell, but it's less apparent if you're British.
There's no gloss in this episode, I don't think.
No what?
Glass.
Gloss.
No
Glass.
glass, but I did hear a couple of slides into something that was wrong. And
Yeah, I
again,
know what you
a
mean.
good chunk of that is they didn't have the budget to do retakes. So they would basically hear it done and go, good enough, and then go on.
Mhm.
Um, but it wasn't as bad as Gloss, the ones in here. And she's
Yeah.
fairly straight on in her accent, I'd say probably about 80% of the time. And at least, the British person attempting to do an American accent does not sound like the rocket pilots from Tomb of the Cybermen, where they all sound like they're from frickin' Houston, Texas.
Oh my
Although I've got to
cheese
say, I've
Texas.
spent time in Houston, and very few people there seem to have that Texan accent.
The
know
Texan
why.
drawl.
That Texan drawl, as it were.
Then again, I
Yeah, that
mostly
might
hang out
actually
with
be more
geeks.
of a panhandle thing.
Then again, I mainly hang out with geeks and younger people, so that might be part
That
of it.
might
Like
also
younger,
be the
younger
issue.
as in 20s type of deal.
When I was in my teens, I was in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program since my father was dead. Um, and my big couple that I wound up getting were coming to the UW up from Lubbock, Texas. And you could really tell their accent. It wasn't as bad as the over-the-top Houston, Texas, but it was. You could tell it's like, yeah, we're gonna go down to the theater,
Mm. I,
and I had to
I
pause for a
I
bit
think
while my brain processed that one.
I think
And
in places like that, like since Houston, has big airports and whatever, the farther you get from the actual, like the farther you get into the state where the actual people who grew up there are more likely to be, you'll find the stronger accents.
Yeah, and the fact that every time I wanted something to drink, it's like, you want a Coke? Nah, I'm more of a Pepsi person. All right, I'll get you a Pepsi. It's still a Coke, and I'm like, it's Twitch worthy.
Yeah.
They're
But
asking you
yeah,
if you want cola.
yeah, they are asking me if I want a soda or a pop or a soda pop.
Or
Oh
a fountain
God.
drink. And don't get me
I
started on
remember
fountains and bubblers.
at my job, I'm not going to go into details because it's worth more than my job to say that, but I overheard this one time where a customer who only referred to soda as pop and an employee who had never heard the word pop used in a relation for soda trying to talk about a mishap that happened when a soda got spilled, and I want
Um,
it was terrible.
yeah, I'm lucky that I grew up in the 1% of the country that actually still refers to it as soda pop. So hearing soda and hearing pop just processes the same to me.
I was lucky
My
enough
grandpa
to
did
have a
that.
book on junk food growing up, which included regional descriptions for pretty much everything.
But yeah, so it's those kind of dialect changes that would not that the British audience wouldn't figure out, and every now and then you will hear her say something that's so obvious British. Like I think she says the word jumper at one point somewhere in one of the series, and we all know that Americans don't refer to those things as jumpers. We refer to them as
Right.
sweaters or sweatshirts.
Hmm.
So that just kind of was an eyebrow raiser. Like, what the
I would
fuck's a
also,
jumper? When I
I,
was a
I would,
kid.
I would
Oh
also
yeah,
throw
I
that
would
to
be
regionalism
so lost when I
myself,
used
to
to
be
hear people
honest.
say jumpers and trainers used to throw me off.
I would still throw that at regionalism myself, but maybe that's just me.
I'm like, what does that have to do with jumping? Why are those
But
trainers? What's the difference between that and a sneaker?
Watch out for
well,
that lorry!
I do think we did enough on Perry's accent and Androzani, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's move on from that.
Although I've got to say, I'm trying to think of a time where I've heard her full name, Perpigillium, without it sounding British.
Yeah, I'm wondering which production decided that was a perfect name for somebody from Miami or California or wherever the hell Perry's supposed to
And I
be
don't.
from.
I believe she's
She
technically from Australia.
she
No,
no, she's
Or she
American.
was in Australia, I thought.
You're thinking Tegan,
Tegan was Australian. Perry was
Oh,
supposed to
right.
be American. And John
and
Nathan Turner made that decision with Perry so that she would appeal more to the American audience.
here she states her full name, but I don't think she actually states where it came from until later on.
Yeah. I know the fact that one of Perry's, I think her father, is supposed to be some big scholar professor guy.
I think he's like a biology professor or something.
Yeah, biology or geology or something to do with plants.
Right.
Anyway, so it's possible that he named her and he's, a bit over brainy for the average American.
I think that's what the TARDIS data core says. Like she's specifically named after a type of plant from
That's what
her
I thought.
biologist or botanist parents.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're about 4 minutes away from the hour, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we started on the hour, so we better
And
start
we've
wrapping
apparently
this
done
up.
everything we
One
could
more
to
thing,
avoid
though, that we
talking
do need
about
to
the
cover.
plot and the villain.
Yeah, I was going to say we do need to talk about the villain, Nestor.
Nestor, yeah, that's what his name is. It's hard to
The
tell with some of
villain,
those
the villain
regionalism.
that cannot climb stairs, yet the set designer thought that he would include stairs. The villain had to get helped up.
Well, he's supposed to be a slug, yet he has legs. Even though they try to
Yeah,
hide it, it's
I'm
very
sorry.
obvious.
Has this the worst Doctor Who villain we've seen?
I think it's one of the worst.
Mm-mm.
He's the
One
most
of them.
ineffectual, unthreatening, and not to mention he's cross-eyed,
In
even though
quite
his
a
eyes
few
don't belong
years.
there.
Um,
And apparently
think
has
that-
a lust on for Perry.
Oh yeah, he has a creepy lust on for Perry.
which is funny because he's so cross-eyed that, well, actually, does he have four eyes or two? Would you say? Would you say his antennae are eyes?
Those
No.
antennae are supposed to be eyes, but
Because
they aren't.
if you consider him to only have two eyes, he's so obviously cross-eyed. There's no way he can see Perry's cleavage.
How do you know that slug people would actually be attracted to cleavage?
Well,
How do you know it's not pheromones?
I'm trying to go with J&T era logic, where cleavage is everything.
Which is funny considering JNT himself was gay.
True.
True, but he was trying to think of what would single straight guys
But maybe
want.
that's why he just wanted to keep boobs on the program.
Which, is Stephen Moffat gay?
No.
No,
Okay.
not that I'm aware of. I believe he does have a Mrs. Moffat. As a matter of fact, yeah, he
Okay,
does.
I,
He
I
is.
was just stating because that technically makes Moffat the first straight showrunner for Doctor Who since 1980.
And I just remembered that he was involved in Curse of Fatal Death because of his wife.
Mm,
So yeah, he is married.
okay.
He is very much straight.
If he had been gay, it would have been like we hadn't had a actual straight showrunner for Doctor Who since 1980, and that would have been a little brain bendy.
But no, he's straight. But yeah, I got the picture of our main enemy now, and yes, he is very much cross-eyed. And what was up with his mouth?
That was a
looked,
very bad mask.
it was a very bad masking, and it looked like he had a beard going on under there, and they could just barely see his bottom lip.
Maybe it was like Cesar Romero. Just refused to shave for the program.
Quite possibly. And
It helped hide his lower chin, I guess, but still.
and just the fact that, giant slug monster. Who was thinking that giant slug monster would be frightening?
Not to mention,
Maybe
who
if they
thought?
looked more like slugs.
Yeah, maybe if they looked more like slugs,
Even
it
if
would
they
have
were
been a little
slugs, I'd be
creepy.
sitting here, it's like, okay, get me a gun with some rock salt.
Yeah, I'm like,
Okay, that's the end of the slug monster. Next!
the only, granted, maybe it could have been, maybe it was the predecessor to the Mighty Jagrafest, but still, even then, that
That's
was
a
not the
stretch of a
most
billion
powerful,
years.
most compelling villain of its era either.
No.
And even then, I would
But
think
for,
that
for,
Jaggerfest
for
was a
level
better
of
main
frightening,
monster.
Nestor versus the Jagrafest, I would go for the Jagrafest.
Yes.
Just saying.
Just saying that the creature
Yeah.
that was essentially a CG attached to a wall, a ceiling. Yeah,
For
I'd rather go for the
suit
CG.
monsters, I think Nestor is pretty much bottom of the barrel here. I think the larval worm, which were basically guys in green jello and bubble wrap, were scarier than this guy.
Yes, but they also had much more messy music, I think, too.
Yeah, the '80s composer. Who's the composer for this?
You mentioned it
who-
at one point, but I forget.
Yeah,
Still, we're not going to tangent now.
yeah. I think he's not the greatest guy for incidental music for hyping it.
Yeah.
The old Radiophonic Workshop guys were really good at it. The '80s composers, not so much. Although every now and then you'll get a gold one. And that is something that the new series really does rock at, is Murray Gold's composing.
Yes.
Okay, so let's sum this up then. Final thoughts, Matt.
Very flawed story that was never quite finished. Very cheap production that obviously did not have the money to do what it was intending to do. Our main character, the Doctor, should be all over the place, but he's way too all over the place. Our main companion character is also cheapened into a very hard spot where she's going to be kind of stuck for the majority of a season. The sets weren't that great. The effects were okayish. Oh, and also the titular title characters, the twins, which we did not cover very much, were about as bland as a cardboard cutout.
Cardboard cutout would have been a better actor.
Yes, in fact, it would have.
The heir would have been a better actor.
But
Aaron.
through all of it, I will say
Okay.
that Colin Baker is throwing his everything at it, and you can tell that he's throwing his everything at it, even if it isn't very good. The end.
Okay. All right, Aaron.
It's bad, but I've seen worse. Yeah, pretty much what Matt said and what everyone else has said. The production, they just did not have the budget for this. It was bad timing. It was not a very good idea to have this try to finish up the as the finale of the series. Um, yeah, it's in the actors. Some of the actors are just not very good. Colin Baker's all over the place, just trying to throw out all kinds of different emotions, and he's crazy. He's crazy and he's scary and he's not very likable. And there's nothing. It would be one thing if he actually showed some kind of compassion or something like that, but all he does is flash off arrogance and everything. So Carrie was just kind of she's. I kind of pity her because she's kind of stuck with this madman or seeming madman. Yeah, and the story is just all over the place too. Just not very well polished or anything. Um, yeah, that's it for me.
Bill.
Well, gotta say it was shoddily written, shoddily put together, shoddily acted by some of the roles. Uh, the main thing I can say about this though is that this is a story that I could watch in one sitting and remember what I watched all the way through, which is more than I can say for certain other Doctor Who stories, Sixth Doctor era included. So, uh, taken as a story by itself, I have seen worse. If I were to try and judge it as part of a serial, as part of a season, I don't think I could say that. But just taken as a single story, it's pretty bad. But there are worse.
Okay. So my thoughts on it are if everything had come together, this probably would have been a middle of the road Doctor Who episode.
Mm-hmm.
But things didn't come together. The acting wasn't there, the costuming was not there, especially the outfit of Nestor himself. The writing just was not detailed enough, and the budget was not appropriate for what they needed to do because they apparently spent most of their attention in this filming block on Caves of Androzani, which of course was absolutely wonderful. Its timing was ill-conceived. It would have been more passable if they had waited, 3, 4 months, whatever, for the new serial session, 6 months, whatever, for this, because then it would have at least been just a week lead off to a new season. But as trying to follow Caves as the finale, it just fails in every imaginable way. I can think of absolutely nothing in this episode that worked. Let's go on to
One thing
rating.
that I can say worked was that Colin acted the script he was given pretty well.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was
It was
acting
a
what he was
very
given,
bad
but
script, but he
what
did
he
what
was
he could
given
with
was
it.
crap.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he was overacting in a
He-
few aspects.
I'd
Well,
say
that's
he was
because that's what they
entertaining on
wanted.
He
screen.
came off as a person doing bad Shakespearean theater.
Well, that's what they wanted, though, is the thing. So you can't
It's
really totally blame him.
Anyway, ratings.
I
Matt.
For Colin Baker alone, this story gets a 1 out of me. Again,
Okay.
it's not Colin Baker's fault that he's doing what he's doing on screen. It is totally the script and the director not giving any leeway. And the production head's not giving him any leeway. If he was given leeway to actually perfect things, things would probably be a lot better. And he's the only shining light in a very, very dark, gloomy setup.
Okay, so you give it a 1.
A 1.
Aaron?
I give it a 2. Fear Her, Love and Monsters, Delta and the Bannerman. Those are some really pretty worse ones, I would say.
Okay. Bill.
I'm going to go with same score as Aaron for pretty much the same reason. There are definitely worse stories that I cannot watch in one sitting, at least if I want to digest them. Whereas this one did not have that weakness, so it at least puts it up high enough to get a 2 out of 5.
All right, I'm going to go with a 1, the same as Matt, because I believe the lowest episode I ever rated was Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, and that got half a star.
Yep.
And this one reminds me of Journey in the fact that all of the characters that we met in this were thoroughly unlikable, save Perry, who is okay.
Asmael had his traits.
Asmael has traits too, but they were still far and few between.
Yeah, it wasn't enough. Um, However, I will watch this one before I will watch Journey to the Center of the TARDIS.
Yes.
Would you watch?
So-
Would you watch this? Would you watch this or Vervoids first?
I haven't
Their voice is
That's
another
really
special
my
talent.
long enough
benchmark
that
for
I
a
do
bad
not feel-
six-factor story.
I haven't watched that one in long enough that I do not feel qualified to name that with a response.
I would actually, if I'm to be very blunt, I would almost probably rate them the same.
That one has the also
Waterfall.
the issue of introducing us to Mel, and I don't like Mel,
Oh.
so
That was the introduction to Mel. That was also one
Oh.
of the next worst monsters ever created.
yeah, I'm not going to. I can't really say. I think I'm like on Matt that they're on par. So I am too going to rate this the same as Matt on a 1, which will bring us to a average score of 1.5.
Yes. This is just barely floating the boat at the very bottom. It's not nearly as bad as a couple of episodes we can name off the top of our heads, but it's not very good in the slightest.
And considering, this was another one of JNT's big ideas, big ideas that just blew up in his face.
Yep. So,
Yeah, that's the
it for
thing.
this time.
From a production standpoint, if I'm to look at this, taking into account the big ideas, as you mentioned, the placement and all of that, it would be dropping to a 1. But as a story by itself, it's watchable, just not good.
Okay. So I think that covers it for the Twin Dilemma. Join us more or less the same time next week, we hope, as we will discuss Time and the Rani, the first appearance of Sylvester McCoy, and
Bring
the
your
start of
earplugs.
the start of the Cartmel era of Doctor Who.
Just shoot him and let Sylvester McCoy work it out.
Wait, who are we
Sylvester
shooting?
McCoy,
Mel?
yay!
Are we shooting Mel? Because if we're shooting Mel and letting
No.
Sylvester McCoy sort it out, I'm all for that.